Okay, so today we're back to talking about David. It's been a while since I last updated you guys on all of that situation, mainly because I was going to say this case has come to a screeching halt, but that would imply that things were happening prior. And honestly, since the case began, since Celeste's body has been found, it feels like nothing has happened. So it's not a screeching halt, it's more of the same. Nothing, I guess. So I figure we can go over what's been new in the last, I think, month since I last updated you on all this. And the reason why all of this is jarring to me and confusing and also demoralizing, there are multiple factors. But one of the central factors is that this case, at least on social media, and even Nancy Grace was talking about this, I'm pretty sure. So it's not just social media like the youths. The thing that worries me about this case is like it's so publicized, and yet it seems like nobody really has a fire under their ass to figure out what happened, why, who did it, what the motivation was, what the methodology of the murder was, if it was a murder, which we'll get into that as well. So I don't know, people being this relaxed and this chill and this nonchalant about the whole thing is opposite to what I see on social media. There are people screaming about shit on social media all the time. So when I see people being really chill about something that you actually should be very concerned about, there's a bit of question marks there. But anyway, let's get into the article with some updates, if you want to call them that. This is an article from Los Angeles Magazine. It was posted 2 days ago. As of today when I'm filming, it's Sunday. You'll see this on Monday, so this is only 3 days ago. So it says, LAPD stands by no further crimes confirmed in death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. LAPD told KTLA the only confirmed offense in the case of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez is the concealment of her body, a statement that's now sparking questions as critics urge prosecutors to examine her alleged relationship with 19-year-old David. One thing I will say is this whole thing of they think that potentially she wasn't murdered and the only crime here is concealment of the body. Is there no other crime related to concealing a crime or concealing a death? Because yeah, sure, hiding a body or whatever was done here, I guess. That's one part of it. But isn't there a part of it to do with like the knowledge? So it's not just the physical, I'm going to take this body and put it over there, but it's also like, I know this is a body now and not a human. This is a dead person now and not a live one. Is there nothing to be done with that information? Does that information not have any repercussions? I'm genuinely asking because I don't know how the legality works with those minute details, but I kind of figure that you should be in a significant amount of trouble because omitting information, I don't know. I always see omissions as pretty equivalent to lying for the most part. So it's like, this isn't perjury, but I don't know. It feels like there should be some kind of consequence to not just hiding the body, but hiding the knowledge that the body is a body, as in it's not a live human anymore, knowledge of death. Maybe I've spent too much time in my own brain. Let's move on. Also, the whole thing that they're apparently, allegedly not really looking into her relationship with David is kind of wild to me because, first of all, that was all types of levels of illegal. But aside from that, it's like, if this person was illegally seeing a child, why on earth would you trust them at all about anything? Like someone who's already a criminal, usually there's something going on there. It doesn't absolutely mean they're guilty. In this particular case, though, he'd have a lot to lose if people found out that he was, quote unquote, dating a minor, though a lot of his fans seem to not care. So maybe I'm wrong about that. The Los Angeles Police Department confirmed Thursday with KTLA that no additional criminal charges have been substantiated in the investigation surrounding the death of 13-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose body was discovered earlier this year after she had been reported missing. In a statement provided to KTLA on November 6th, the department said its prior news release stand on its own, reaffirming that no crime other than concealment of a body may have occurred. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office also told the outlet that no case has yet been presented for review or prosecution. However, this doesn't change the fact that someone hid Hernandez's body and someone should be charged and punished. Completely agree with that last line because concealment of the body, like I said, goes back to concealing the information that there is a body, concealing a death, concealing a potential missing child report, which that's also a bit iffy, and we'll talk about Celeste's family, which is something I've not really wanted to talk about because It feels weird and invasive, but at some point, I think some questions should be raised because the silence has been deafening and a lot of people on social media are noticing that. I will also say, if they're going to say that there's basically nothing new from the case and that their prior news release stands on its own, then maybe the only thing you need to actually release is the cause of death, because realistically, the reason why the concealment of the body is what a lot of people are concerned about is because people don't believe that someone just came across Celeste's body. Someone just came across this cadaver and then was like, you know what, let me put this in the trunk of a car, David's car. So I don't know who else had access to David's car keys, but this is where the story gets wilder and wilder, because it's hard to conceive of a reality where somebody else has the keys to your car and they just happen to put the body in your car unless you told them to, or unless there was some kind of conversation, right? Most people don't give their car keys to a bunch of people, right? So it's also already a really restricted circle who would have the keys to your car. For example, I'm the only one who has my car keys. I don't know many people, apart from partners, who share their car keys. So I'm even confused about the logistics of that, which granted is kind of boring to think about, but I think it's kind of essential, right? Because it would be like me being the only person to have the keys to my house and then a body's found in my house. Who are you going to look at? Me, obviously. The case has drawn national attention due to Rivas Hernandez's prior connection to David Anthony Burke, a 19-year-old singer known professionally as David, who had been linked to the missing teen before her death. Neither David nor anyone else has been charged in connection with the case. This is another thing I saw on social media where people are saying that David's silence is not boding well for him. And I don't know about all of that because I'm not a lawyer, so I really don't know what the best course of action would be in this particular scenario, especially since I don't know, I'm assuming, the details that the lawyers and the police know. I'm sure there's certain things that aren't out in the public quite yet. That being said, yeah, I mean, it does look bad that he's not saying anything. At the same time, if he were to say something, and if he were to say something with the advice of his own lawyers, I think it would just be shit like no comment. Like, there's no world where I can imagine his lawyers being like, hey, be your true self, bestie. Say whatever you'd write in your diary. That wasn't going to happen anyway. That being said, it doesn't really seem like he's committed to finding out what happened, and I think that's the thing. But again, that's a catch-22, because if you can't talk, then you can't let people know that you care about this case, right? So I don't want to make any assumptions, though I do think he looks extremely, extremely guilty. I wonder how tied his hands are is my question. Though, again, I don't really have empathy for pedophiles, so. Following the KTLA report, several journalists, advocates, and online commentators expressed frustration that investigators have not publicly addressed the nature of the relationship between the artist and the minor. Steve Fisher, a Los Angeles PI, posted on X. Nowhere in the press release or in any official statements has there been mention of an investigation into the relationship David had with Celeste. Yes, that could be a difficult case to prove because Celeste is no longer here to testify, but that does not mean it should not be pursued. Fisher also added, even if people close to Celeste are unwilling to cooperate because it would expose their knowledge of the illegal relationship, charges should still be filed. We must prove we will protect children from predators. And I completely agree with that. I don't understand what there is to be gained by not investigating that relationship, especially when that relationship seems to be at the very center of whatever may or may not have happened to Celeste. So to just be like, oh yeah, this has nothing to do with it. And I'm like, really? A pedophile musician dating, quote unquote, a 13-year-old and having her over at his house all the time, that you think is completely unrelated to the fact that she was randomly found dead in the trunk of said pedophile's car? You think all of that just happened coincidentally and there's no need to look into the relationship? Can we be for fucking real? Just 1 second here. Come on. Law enforcement sources told KTLA that the case remains technically open, but reiterated that, as of this week, no new evidence of additional crimes has been confirmed. I really wonder what the police thinks is going to happen here in terms of the public, because the public is invested. I myself have been following this pretty closely just because of the nature of this case. It's so infinitely weird. Not just what happened or didn't happen, but the way that this has been treated is so fucking odd that, honestly, that is really what I think is making a lot of people's kind of radars go off, is this is not being treated normally. And if you look at the comments on any video related to Celeste and David on TikTok, there are thousands of comments per video talking about cover-ups, talking about payoffs and cover-ups. Just none of it. No one in these comments is thinking, yes, this case is definitely closed. We have all the answers that we need. Let's move on. No one is saying that because realistically, everyone is aware that something very off is happening here, but we're all supposed to act like it's normal. Community advocates, meanwhile, say they will continue to pressure the LAPD and District Attorney Nathan Hochman's office to pursue a broader inquiry. That's where we're at as of now, and honestly, so this is where my take becomes potentially slightly controversial. It's not controversial in my opinion, but honestly, with the internet, I don't even know these days. So this is the thing. Initially, it wasn't strange to me that Celeste's family was not saying anything to the press. They probably don't want to be annoyed by the press in a time that's been, I can only assume, extremely difficult. At what point, though, do we decide that someone has to say something? Because if they're not advocating for the police to find any solutions, then it kind of reads as odd, right? Because until you think the police is working, and maybe they do, until you think that they're working towards answers and there's going to be some kind of justice here, until that's what you believe, okay, it makes sense that you're not speaking up. However, once it turns out that the cops are dragging their feet, or the investigation has come to a standstill, or they've prioritized something else, once it happens that this is no longer a priority, you'd think that the family would speak up, even just on social media, because that would get immediately picked up by a bunch of people, at least on TikTok, and to put the pressure on publicly to say, hey, we're her family, hey, we know more than everyone else does. I can only assume that they're told more than the public. We know more than everyone else does, or at least the same stuff. And these things are not adding up. We want answers to these things. Did you look into this relationship with this grown-ass man? And also, the other thing that we should be keeping in mind in regard to the family is that there are a lot of conspiracy theories running rampant on social media, especially in regard to the potential rapport between the family and David. I don't know if I mentioned this videos and videos ago, but in one of the first videos I made about this case, there were people in the comments saying that they thought that David paid off the family to keep quiet about his relationship with their daughter, or paid them off to make the relationship more acceptable, kind of like, yeah, I know I'm too old, but here's money kind of thing. I have not found any evidence supporting that, hence why I've not really focused on that. That being said, with these kinds of random stories circulating and the fact that they're not speaking up, they haven't spoken to any news sources that I've seen, I haven't seen anything relating to any of the family saying anything, all of it put together looks quite strange. And one of the first things we see with cases like this is often the family begging people to come forward, anyone who has information to share, to help them find the truth of what happened to their child. That's what we often see in cases like this. And I think that that's also what's weirding people out, is that there's a very stark juxtaposition where this family has not been seen or heard from, as far as I know, whereas other families are going around with posters and posting on social media and appealing to the media, talking to journalists. There's all this other kind of work that's being put in. And that's not me shaming the family. That's me saying that people on social media are starting to become suspicious because of this juxtaposition, because the family has been so silent, which then returns to all the conspiracy theories I mentioned before of people thinking that David paid off the family in some respect. Regardless, the more the police doesn't really say, the more the media is going to keep searching here, because there's clearly something going on, something that doesn't seem up to par, something that doesn't seem to be following regulations or, the police methodology trajectory, because everyone here is picking up on the fact that very little is coming out. It seems like we don't even know anything for sure, for real. It's all odd, especially with the amount of time that has passed. This is not a new thing from yesterday, right? Anyway, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.